I've been asked very often, what's the #1 tip you can give to catch more and bigger bass on frogs? And it's really hard to pick one tip that's really going to make a big difference. And besides the tackle and the gear that you need, probably the #1 tip that I can kind of pick out, it's really close, but it has to be perfecting your casting. And that is so much in bass fishing. I mean, like I said before, the fact is, if you don't get your lure around the fish, you're not going to catch one. You know, you're not going to get a fish to swim 10 feet away, 10 miles away, you know, to catch a lure. If you don't get it to where they live, where they're at, you're not going to catch one. And that's one of the biggest keys with frog fishing. Like I said, you're going to hear it a lot, is getting it in the thickest cover, around it, underneath it, over it. It just doesn't matter. Throw it in there. It's probably going to come out more than likely. Don't worry about it. That's one of the biggest things, is your casting. If you can't get it into the thickest places, I mean, if I'm fishing bushes, I want to get this thing underneath the bush all the way to the bank. I don't want to even see the lure. I just want to start working it back. I don't care if the line's over a limb. But, you know, perfecting your different casts, spending some time practicing that, learning your different casts. When it comes to fishing, and especially frog fishing, there's a couple different types of casts that I use on a regular basis. And probably the #1 is an underhand roll cast. I use this in probably 75+% of my fishing anyway. And the underhand roll cast is really good for moderate to even somewhat long casts. And, you know, a little bit short, tight cast underneath bushes. It's really good for skipping, things like that. You can get it way underneath stuff with skipping, or you can just make a real short, accurate cast to a lay down, things like that. The underhand roll cast, #1, get really good at it. Not only do you want to be proficient at it to where you can do it without even thinking about it, so you're going to have to do it a lot to where you don't even think about it. It's just, you just toss the thing out there. But you're also going to want to get good enough at it to where you can skip the lure. And that's going to take a little bit of time, but let's walk through an underhand roll cast. Basically, it's all in a momentum type cast. You're gonna get the lure, and you're gonna go up and then back down with it. And the main thing is finding the correct release point where you're gonna let the lure go free. There's a lot of videos on peak performance fishing where you can find this stuff. It's an absolutely important cast. When you get good at it, you're gonna be able to skip way underneath targets. You're going to have the momentum to be able to get way underneath bushes without even skipping it. But just take some time with it. Bait caster is the preferred setup with frog fishing. And when you're trying to do underhand roll cast, very important, bait casting. Just learn how to use your thumb, learn how to do the underhand roll cast. It's basically just a momentum. You're swinging in the bait in a circular fashion, and then you're releasing it. And once you release it, you got to find that right point to release it. You're going to get the bait out there. And just practice it. There's a lot of videos, like I said, on peak performance fishing. Let's go ahead and move on to other types of casts. The next type of cast that I like to use is small pitches. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the lure with my hand just like this, and I'm going to just swing it out there just like that. It's just basically like a pendulum, but it's going to be straight in front of me, small pitches. Where I use this cast often is if I'm around docks and I'm getting it into really tight little places. Like you're going to see here, I'm casting between the edge of a dock and the edge of a boat. I mean, this little gap right here is probably 4 inches wide, and it's kind of hard to get it with an underhand roll cast or a sidearm cast, but you get that little pitch, you get it in there, and you're going to see right here I got bit. And with any other cast, I probably wouldn't have got it in there just right. Using these casts is going to really help you. This is going to be one you're going to use for really tight, really short, and very accurate casts, as you see there. Now the next cast is a cast that I use a fair amount of the time, but really not a whole lot, and it's basically just a sidearm cast. And all you're going to do is you're just going to get the lure and just plop it out there with a sidearm cast. It's a good cast to use when you're fishing like seawalls, rocks, and around wood and stuff like that too. But the main thing, remember that underhand roll cast. That's going to be your bread and butter. If you're a frog fisherman, you're going to be able to skip with it. You're going to be able to get around bushes, underneath things. Very accurate. You want to get good enough at it where you can consistently cast into very tight spots where you can call your shot. When you're able to do that, you're just asking for your frogs to get destroyed all day long by bass. So now we're going to wrap up the importance of your casting in your frog fishing. Make sure you have the right gear, the right tackle, and you put it in the right places. Once you do that, you just want to get out there and practice. Remember those 3 different types of casts. Your bread and butter, once again, underhand roll cast. You're basically using the momentum of the lure and making a small little sidearm cast, and it's going to go in a circular fashion like that. Main thing, getting that right release point. use those tips and techniques, get out there and practice. It's going to take some time. If you need to, get some cheap monofilament fishing line, get out there and practice it. Really, really big key. This is the type of cast you're going to use, and you should use in probably 75+% of your frog fishing. Or you need to understand that there are several different ways to work a hollow-bodied frog. You can make it walk back and forth. You can see there where it walks side to side. You can have it chug, where it just spits a little bit of water in front. You can make it spit, and you can also just reel the frog and reel it back in. Really, what I do most of the time is I like to fish it with a normal to, moderate to fast retrieve, and I like to make it walk. But one of the most important things you can do in your frog fishing when you cast it somewhere is to vary the retrieve. You're going to see here in this fish catch, I'm spitting this thing along, I'm kind of chugging this popper, and then all of a sudden I start walking it, and then I change the retrieve, and then this fish bites. Oftentimes fish will see it, they might follow it, and you vary that retrieve, then they'll go up and they'll absolutely swallow it. One of the other things you can do when you actually get it around a piece of cover is pause it and make it sit, and then change the retrieve. Now that you know how you should fish the lure, let's get into teaching you how to do it. There's a lot of guys that don't know how to actually walk the lure, don't know how to make it spit and chug, and they're not good enough at it to where they can actually vary the retrieves and stuff like that. And it's very subtle. This isn't something, it's all in your wrist. It's not something where you're wanting to jerk your whole arm. Let's go ahead and make a cast. I'll walk you through it. Now when you make this cast, it's going to be small twitches. It's all in your wrist, and all you're doing is reeling the slack. Every time you move your wrist and just barely twitch it, you're reeling up your slack at the same time. That's how you can get this bait to walk. Now often when I do this, I give it small little just millisecond pauses, and I'm throwing slack to it. That's important. You're going to twitch your rod forward, and then you're going to twitch it back to the lure. Once you do that, it's throwing slack and it's allowing the lure to walk. When you give it slack, that's what's going to make it walk. Now if I keep the tension in it the whole time that I work it, and I'm not really giving it much slack, that's how you can make the bait kind of spit and chug back to you. It's not throwing the slack to allow it to go left and right. Once you throw that little millisecond of slack back, it's really subtle, you're going to notice that the bait's going to walk back and forth, and then from there you can vary the retrieve. If you're just starting out and you're just learning how to do this for the first time, go real slow with it. Watch how I work the bait and just get to give it small twitches and then throw slack to it. And you're going to notice once you get the right amount of pressure and you give it the right amount of slack, and it's not an absolute science, but you'll get it. Once you put a little bit of time into it, you're going to notice that it's going to start walking back and forth. And oftentimes, if you start doing it, you make a cast out there and you walk this bait back and forth and you're trying to get it to walk and it doesn't start walking right away, don't be concerned. Oftentimes it takes a few little twitches for the bait to actually start walking, at least for me even. So that's the biggest thing, just really small twitches. You can see here I'm moving this rod, maybe 4 to 6 inches at a time. It's not very much, and then I'm just reeling the slack. You can see I'm just reeling the slack up every time. That's the biggest thing. Your wrists do all the work, and then you're just reeling in the slack. It's really not that hard. It takes a little bit of time, but like I said, I fish my frog generally really, really fast. I'm moving it along at a moderate to often a really pretty quick pace. I'd call it a fast pace, and I'm making it walk back and forth and almost dart. Once you get to a point where you can do that, you're positioning yourself to cover a lot of water and catch fish that other guys aren't catching, because a lot of guys, they can't walk a frog, they can't vary the retrieve. Spend some time with this on a pond or in a pool and just give it those small twitches. Always throw that slack back. Sooner or later you're going to get real good at it and you're going to be able to catch bass on frogs. Johnny Jenkins here, and I want to thank you for watching this video. If you're having problems hooking fish, catching fish because you're not getting in the right places, or you're just completely intimidated by the technique and all of that, it can be very frustrating. So that's why I've come up with a 3-part series of videos that's going to help you do that. I know you're going to love them. Be sure to leave some comments down below and bring some positive feedback so we can know what you think.